people understand like what your role is, Liam, what do you do within Amwins? Like, what is your overall role and responsibilities there?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll say where I was versus where I am today. So I started out in A2, which was binding authority transportation underwriter within Amwins Group, one of our opcos, operating companies within the underwriting division. I was an underwriter there for about 8 years, and then moved into, we pulled together 5 different teams that were, acquired over time, that were also in the binding authority transportation space, and pulled them in to make one larger ATU. And as part of that process, I stepped into an ops role. So I ended up leading building and leading that combined operations team for about 4 years. Since then, I kind of moved from that position and am now supporting the larger underwriting division. So no longer directly with the ATU, there's a very strong dotted line in supporting the underwriting opcos from an operations standpoint, for any divisional needs or backroom support, or assisting not directly, but in helping build some operational efficiencies and being mindful of regulatory compliance, and then really just kind of being that resource and seat at the table to ensure that the underwriting division's getting representation in all of those corporate conversations about ops, systems, tech, and everything in between.
If you had to sum Tommy up, though, and your father, I'm going to throw Joe in there too, in 2 sentences. We'll do 2 separate sentences. How would you? I'll give a couple sentences. What would you say about them?
Sure. So I intentionally didn't button all of my buttons up just to be Tommy-like today for this call. Tommy is a wealth of knowledge. I think that is the easiest way to sum him up, is that he is a wealth of knowledge about the transportation insurance industry. The best thing I will say about Tommy is, if you're ever teaching a class with Tommy and it's a 2-hour class, you only need to prepare for 5 minutes, because Tommy can fill in every gap imaginable with all of the knowledge that he has on our segment of the industry. Phenomenal resource.
Yeah, awesome. How about your dad? What do you got to say about your dad?
Thank you. That's not putting me on the spot at all. I mentioned earlier that I went to him with my questions early on, and by early on I mean constantly. Maybe less so today, but only just. He is a phenomenal teacher and has been the best mentor a person could ask for getting into our segment of the insurance space. Not just communicating what the answer is, but trying to teach the thought process behind any decisions and the reason, and just trying to train that the art of underwriting versus the what, but the why. The only negative thing I will say is that I don't get free meals all the time now, which is a little bit. So we alternate back and forth, which is probably the fair thing, because I'm an adult, but you kind of miss that, right?
I miss the free meal. I can't tell you that. It's hard to go from free meals to alternating. I don't know if I accept that, Liam. I don't think that would sit well with me. Where and when did you meet Tommy?
I couldn't tell you the first time Tommy met me, because you mentioned my dad, and Joe's been in the transportation insurance space for about 132 years, and Tommy's give or take 500. So I'm going to be in trouble with both of them now, which is fine. I'm sure my first exposure to Tommy was 20 some odd years ago, but as a professional, it was probably Truckers One at a legacy AMGA event. I'm going to say roundabouts 12 years ago, were I to guess, is when I was fully committed to the transportation space, that this was going to be my career and trying to go out of my way to find these classes. And Truckers One that was presented there is largely equivalent to a lot of the motor carrier considerations pieces that Tommy's doing today. Except I would say that the ones he's putting on today are better. So that's the thing.
Yeah. I remember me and Tommy too, probably around the same time, Liam, at one of the carrier meetups. And I remember after I thought, I'm like, wow, he's actually pretty interesting. He's like a lively guy. He's got a certain charisma behind him. But man, after we said, okay, everyone could take a lunch break, I remember running outside away from everyone so no one would hear me. And I was on the phone in my office saying, hey, you guys need to check this policy form, check this, and call this customer, make sure they have that. He scared the bejesus out of me. And I was a little bit, green behind the ears at the time. So I was in my learning phase, as I like to think of. But that actually is what I think opened up a lot of my curiosity just about insurance in general. Then I come to find that he was a part of a membership or part of the organization. It was a no-brainer. If I knew that most of the members are like him, or even yourself or your father for that matter, well, shoot, I mean, it's a priceless amount. Just the money. It's not even about the money. It's just about the education and the communication with people.
No, the value proposition for MCIEF membership is hilariously one-sided. People are doing themselves a disservice by not being members.
Sure. What have you seen more on the transportation side? Yeah. What have you seen as far as carrier guidelines of going? Like, do you see that they're tightening up, loosening up? Someone's throwing their hat into the ring where they want to just start writing all the new ventures in the world? What are you noticing there?
Yeah, anyone who says I want to write all the new ventures in the world, it's kind of a small red flag. So to be fair, I think new ventures can be written and priced appropriately, and you can write those profitably. But they do take a keen underwriting eye and being mindful of the exposures associated with those risks. Sorry, that's always been a hill I've been willing to die on.
I agree. Correct. I absolutely agree.
With respects to underwriting guidelines, and I would probably be best to pass this question to the teams that are actively working it, because I don't want to speak out of church. I have seen some tightening. I'm continuing to see rate increases. Rate inadequacy is continuing to be a factor across the board. There have been some tort wins, specifically in Texas, that have the potential to turn things around. But it still seems like Fed limits are still less than they likely should be for motor carrier risks, and cat losses continue to happen, and those exorbitant claims, which I'll kind of leave unstated, but $400+ million claims on $1 million policy are not sustainable for the industry, and legal reform would certainly go a long way in ensuring that again, we're able to enable these motor carriers to operate, and that's what our end game here is ensuring that these businesses are legally able to operate, and they're able to provide protection for the public for the exposures that they inherently represent for what the good that they do for the nation and what they provide, the services they provide.
Sure. I mean, what we've noticed is we'll just touch on the new ventures, because that's a lot of what I think some of the retail agents have been seeing that are just, I'm talking about me personally. A lot of people, owner-operators, are not getting their own insurance. We're seeing that a lot of the larger carriers are requiring them to get their own insurance and work independently from them. And that's why I think if they already have a dedicated route that they're working on, and you call it a new venture, are they really a new venture? What really changed there materially?
Yep.
We're seeing a lot of that happening in the industry, at least. But yeah, the claims as far as new ventures go are not so much with they're all over the place. But the nuclear verdicts that you've alluded to are really like crippling. It really does tighten up the market quite a bit. What are some of the claims that you've seen though? Like, if there's any you can touch on, Liam, that you've seen that's really like, been devastating.
But I mean, my immediate reaction is any claim where there's bodily injury or fatality is a devastating claim. We've had devastating from a book standpoint, personal loss aside. We've had a number of claims where, and I believe Tommy has taught on some of these. A vehicle may be parked on the roadway. It may be pulled off to the side. It may have done its part in ensuring that there are either flares or triangles down to ensure that folks are aware that these vehicles are there. But in the event of an accident, the motor carrier is absolutely going to be brought into that claim, despite the fact that it was not a vehicle on the road in the effort of driving, but simply by being there. And part of that's not to call out the lack of truck parking across the U.S., but that's a real factor, especially 2 years back when we saw a number of truck stops closed down, or rest areas closed down. But those are real exposures and real claims that do happen, and we're paying out. Our insurers are paying out millions of dollars for these claims that are essentially not at fault due to another party's negligence or another party failing to keep both eyes on the road. So it's not a specific example. I apologize. But that's one that I see, and one that always hurts when it's clear not at fault, but we know that we're being brought in, and oftentimes it will lead to a nuclear verdict any time that a jury is involved.
I say. I mean, I think just because it's a truck in general and they're big and they look scary, and of course it's a company for that matter, always kind of like they're always going to be brought into any type of litigation or a suit to begin with, which is, unfortunately just the nature of the business that they're in. As far as like the organization of, MCIEF, what made you want to join that? I mean, of course, your father, awesome guy too. I really enjoyed speaking. I love talking to that guy. He's a really good dude.
Never met the guy.
Never. Joe's a good dude. But what made you want to get involved with just the trucking aspect in general, or
Yeah, of course. Of course. So I guess it was a number of things. One, if I'm going into something, I want to understand it wholly. I think as an underwriter, the exposure to things that I had not previously encountered, the exposure, so be that classes, be that types of coverage, be that claims, be that perspective from the plaintiff's attorneys, defendant's attorneys, claim specialists, whatever the case may be. Exposure to the mindset from our markets, and that networking aspect, peer-to-peer learning from that side. Likewise, the peer-to-peer experiences that have been shared from with retail partners during the annual meetings. All of these really kind of this confluence of knowledge, of perspective, of context, is really where I think the MCIEF comes in and provides real value to its members. On top of just the pure, educational piece, which is hugely meaningful and beneficial, in not just refreshing your mind on terms, conditions, things of that nature, but staying current. The ATRI updates are phenomenal. Things of that nature, just staying current on the marketplace today. It has provided real benefits, tangible benefits to an underwriter and to the underwriting desk.
Let's assume that someone is watching us right now, Liam, and it's intimidating, right? It could be intimidating to learn this specific coverage in, let's say, home or auto insurance. Even assuming someone coming from the personal lines side of things with insurance going into trucking. what would you say to that? As far as like just making them comfortable with dealing with this line of business?
Start small. I started out as an intern. I was ordering loss runs, and I was helping with monthly reporters. And from that, it was just kind of like, all right, I got this down. What's next? I don't think you should try to lie to yourself and think that you're going to become an expert overnight. I've been attending these events. I've been sitting in on Tommy classes for the last, 13 years, something like that. And without fail, there's still more to learn. I guess always stay hungry. Don't try to get out from beyond yourself. Always ask questions. The transportation insurance space and all of the underwriters, all of the folks that I've met within this segment have been incredibly generous with their time. Many of whom enjoy hearing themselves talk, which is beneficial to everyone. But everyone seems very willing to bring up that next generation and bring up others to make them better. We as an industry are absolutely made better by the expansion of knowledge within. So don't get ahead of yourselves. Take it one step at a time. Find a mentor. Find someone. You mentioned my dad. I have annoyed the ever living expletive out of him. I'm going to try to cursing on a recording. But he was a phenomenal resource for me, which I selfishly took advantage of, and I have no regrets in doing so. He may. But find a manager, find a colleague, find a peer, not directly related to transportation, but in the professional space. Early on in my career, I found someone who I decided was my nemesis. And it was a friendly rivalry, but it was someone who I knew was at a further state in their career than I was at that point in time. And it was just a level of personal benchmarking, like, okay, at this time he was at this point, what can I do to get myself there? Part of that was building a personal plan for education and what I wanted to learn over X period of time. And part of that was simply just, acknowledging that, hey, things happen at different times, things kind of come with time. But, just staying hungry and trying to find, trying to be as well versed in the segment, the item that you're working on as you possibly can, and then building off of that knowledge, knowing that the foundation that you're building early on is going to pay off in spades when you get to a point where you're, actively writing, and then people are going to, be coming to you, and you're going to be the manager that everyone's going to say, hey, help me with this. And before long, you're going to be very confused that people are coming to you and asking for help. But
right,
it's cyclical, and it's good.
You touched on something there too, aside from just learning too, Liam. It's also the networking. We do have a foundation of people that we can communicate with, and it's not just about education, which is obviously one of the pillars of the foundation, but it's meeting people like you. It's meeting the underwriters, the retailers, vendors, or anyone really involved in the trucking industry. Has that helped shape, those really should help shape your better understand or a greater understanding of the trucking market in itself too? Do you stay in touch with them? Do you communicate with them often? Yes.
I don't actually know that I need to elaborate on that beyond just saying yes, absolutely. Peer-to-peer learning is probably has been the greatest asset in my professional development. And it's understanding that context, it's understanding, what's outside of your purview, what's outside of, your blinders. You can be phenomenal at this, but without that outside perspective, you're not going to see a full picture. I was extremely fortunate to have early on a few market underwriters who took to me, and I was able to ask them a bunch of questions about the market side and get their insight and figure out how to, how to look at a specific risk that didn't quite look the same as everything else from their mindset, and that helped me get that additional perspective. And I had some retail agents along the way who were at a comparable age, and we were able to kind of grow up in the industry together, which building off one another, that relationship, it pays off for both parties. You have a relationship with someone with whom you can trust. You learn from one another, and it's just a good way to build a network and build a professional environment. So yeah, short answer, yes, absolutely.
Gotcha. And you touched on even like age, right? So do you see that there is a bit of a transition of like the younger generation kind of come in, quote unquote? Do you see the attrition of the older or seasoned producers and the newer producers coming in now? Is there an uptick of that? What have you noticed?
Sure, definitely navigated with the phrasing there. There's definitely a knowledge gap, and I think that a lot of folks identified this, over the last 5 years, and there have been a lot of efforts to bring up that next generation and try to invest and try to ensure that the knowledge doesn't just kind of seep away with the ultimate retirement of other folks. I don't necessarily think that's, in many cases that is, younger folks, but in other cases, this is folks from other segments of the industry. It's folks from the carrier side coming to the wholesale side going to the carrier side, going to the retail side. But certainly, I would say that's probably just been a constant for the last 5 to 8 years, where the industry recognizes that a number of our transportation experts are of a certain age and looking for opportunities to pass that knowledge on to others, and or as my dad is looking to do, like buying a giant tractor at some point so that he can spend time outdoors. So I guess yes, but I don't know that it's new, and I haven't necessarily seen an uptick. I just know that people are getting very real about their investment in that next generation.
So Tommy had said something to me in the past. He said, provide more than a policy. And I mean, when he said that to me, it really kind of leveled me a bit.
Yep.
Because it's funny because as you're seeing this transition where, again, you have the unseasoned producers that are coming in, youthful producers coming in, we have all the information at our fingertips. We have never lived in a generation where you can have access to all this data and information within a click of a button.
Mm-hmm.
So as that transition is happening, learning and onboarding, the curve has become lessened. So I think as we are becoming more familiar with any business vertical that you might be wanting to become educated in, it's easier to learn and become an expert in your field, a true expert. So it allows us to not just give out a price. We can provide a service now. You could actually be consultative. You could actually help and risk manage some of the whatever, again, business vertical that you're looking to consult.
Sure. No, I definitely agree. The opportunity is there, and my only area of concern is with how readily available data is today. It's very easy for a newer producer to focus on that piece and say, I can get this out quickly. I can just, do the bare minimum. I'm relying on this data set and not adding value to that transaction, not being consultative, not looking out for the best interests of your client. And I'm not saying that that's the case, but it does make it easier to, plug numbers in and, be done with it, as opposed to, truly adding value to the relationship. I think Tommy's absolutely on point, and that is the producers, the underwriters who go that extra leg, that extra mile, are absolutely the ones that are going to be in it for the long haul, and they're the ones that you want to partner with. And ultimately, that there are reasons that a lot of these folks shops have been in business for 50, 60, 70 years. it's because they've continued to expand and provide value to a relationship, not just, an automated service.
Agreed. And you know what? In the world where it is very easy to just type in a few things and get a quote out, and just push the number, there's something to be said about that. You could just do volume, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's sustainable. I think you need to actually know a thing or two, especially when it comes to compliance or anything that's federally regulated for that matter. You're going to need to know a little bit more about that. You can't get away with that. A personal auto, maybe even homeowners, maybe, but not so much in the transportation vertical.
I'm a compliance nerd, so completely agree.
Yeah, and not to go off too much in my tangent, but I've actually tried learning a little bit more about how to be a safety manager. Like, what do they see? Like, what does a DOT officer see? What are they looking for? And just going that simple extra step and just explaining it to a prospect opens up the entire world for them because they know that and it's not difficult. I mean, that's what I'm kind of want to emphasize to anyone who's trying to taking on becoming involved with the foundation, is that it's really just, coming in with an open, curious mind and learning a little bit outside of just what the insurance policy is or what's within it. And you really can provide a very good service to your clients.
Absolutely. And if anyone listening to this hasn't read the policy form, you should do that. That's a huge red flag, and happens more often than I would like to admit with some of our folks. So,
unfortunately, Liam, they all read the policy form. I just think at the time they do read it, it's after something happened.
That's fair.
I think that's usually when they're digging through it and they're saying, and then that's when you have agents and even the unfortunate consumer finds themselves having a problem there. Liam, if someone needed to reach out to you or want to communicate with you, what's the best way to do that?
Email is not it's a boring response, but my email is there. It's liam.hutelmyer@amwins.com. I've got a LinkedIn profile. It's also my name, because I don't think people can be creative on that.
Liam, thanks again, man, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Sure. Take care.